So, mother-in-law, have you completed the inheritance paperwork yet? Yeah, have you received the money already? Back when my husband was well, Julian and his family hardly ever visited, but now here they are. They deliberately brought our grandson, Elliot, to my house and started asking about my late husband's inheritance. Without even attempting to hide their greedy intentions, they suggested the inheritance should be used for our grandson. For most grandparents, grandchildren are inherently adorable. However, Elliot, who was brought over just so Julian could squeeze money out of me, seemed like a stranger. Now, the process is complicated and it's not done yet. I quickly tell a lie. Ashley smirks. Would you like some help with that? Julian raised his voice, clearly irritated by my attitude. Meanwhile, Elliot, who hadn't even greeted me, was running around the living room and rummaging through the fridge for snacks and juice. For a grandchild, his behavior was far from adorable. And his parents, who were only here to talk about money, did nothing to discipline him. I was stunned by their audacity. To make matters worse, the next day Ashley's parents showed up, preaching to me about what a family should be like. Despite being practically strangers to me, they had no issue voicing their self-serving opinions, possibly blinded by the $3 million inheritance. I had reached my breaking point. Just then, a loud crash echoed from behind me. Taking that as my cue, I decided it was time to teach them a lesson. I am Kristen, 66 years old this year. I was a simple housewife with 2 children, but my late husband was a businessman who had amassed considerable wealth. After his funeral, the subject of inheritance caused friction between me and my children. They say money changes people, but I never thought my own son would be among them. I never expected this to escalate into such a chaotic situation involving even non-family members. After the funeral, I called a lawyer and discussed the inheritance with my children. In the end, almost all of my husband's estate would be transferred to me, thanks to a will he'd prepared that was intended to compensate me for my struggles. I'd spent 6 years catering to my husband, who was averse to living in a facility. He had a variety of interests: smoking, drinking, betting on horse races, which made caregiving anything but easy. At that time, our children had already moved out. I had done my best not to burden them. So, I felt grateful for the portion my husband had left for me in his will, recognizing my efforts. The inheritance amounted to around $3 million. My daughter Sasha was supportive from the get-go. She was convinced that I should inherit everything, especially considering the separate sums my husband had prepared for the children. The problem was Julian, my son. Frowning, Julian started to speak his mind freely. Sasha is single, and I have a family. It's unfair we get the same amount. Well, your wife isn't entitled to any of it, so it's only fair. Even so, $3 million for Mom, that's way too much. What about your children? Julian was intent on portraying me as a greedy to increase his own share. Despite the will being kept safely with a lawyer, he claimed that I fabricated it. He argued that it was unfair not to divide the inheritance equally among his sister and himself. Finally, Julian threatened to sue me, drawing sharp criticism from the attending lawyer. If they were so adamant about their entitlement, they should have at least shown their faces more often. Sasha used to visit now and then, but Julian never made an effort. He always cited work or parenting as reasons for not visiting us. I sighed, thinking about Julian, who who had shown no help with caregiving but was now so concerned about the money. "Don't worry about Julian, Mom," Sasha reassured me. But is Julian really that strapped for cash? I wondered. Who knows? They often go on family trips. Maybe they just want more spending money, Sasha speculated. Her words gave me an uneasy feeling. That gut feeling proved accurate. I was about to get entangled in yet another fruitless quarrel with Julian and his family. A while after discussing the inheritance and consulting with the lawyer, the paperwork for receiving the inheritance was finally complete. That's when Julian and his wife, Ashley, showed up at our home. Though I had an uneasy feeling, I let them in. After brief pleasantries, they quickly got to the topic of the inheritance. "Did you already finish all the inheritance paperwork, mother-in-law?" "Yeah, is the money transferred?" "No, the process is a bit complicated, so it's not done yet." "If you need help, we can assist. Managing $3 million must be a headache, right?" "I'm good, thanks. So, what brings you here today?" "Come on, don't be so cold. We even brought your grandson to see you." Along with them was Elliot, my grandson, whom I hadn't seen since he was in elementary school, and even before my husband passed away. I had only babysat Elliot a few times when he was a baby. I hadn't even been invited to his birthday parties or any other celebrations lately. The most I had done was send gifts and monetary gifts through Julian. To a regular grandparent, a grandchild might be unconditionally adorable. But to me, Elliot felt like a stranger, just another kid Julian and his spouse brought along to squeeze money out of me. "Isn't it great to see your grandson after such a long time?" "Well, I suppose. Kids will start costing more money as they grow, you know." "That's true. You two better start working hard." "What's that supposed to mean? Don't you want to do something nice for your adorable grandson?" Meanwhile, Elliot, the subject of all this fuss, didn't even greet me. He was busy running around the living room and even went as far as open the fridge to dig out snacks and juice. Neither Ashley nor Julian reprimanded Elliot. They simply emphasized how energetic and cute their son was. "What's so cute about this disrespectful kid?" "Elliot, don't you think you're a bit too wild? Teaching manners and common sense is a parent's job." "Oh, our parenting approach doesn't include scolding, so it's fine." I had no idea what she meant by fine, but it seemed Elliot wasn't getting the hint that he was being admonished. Ashley followed Elliot around as he freely explored the house, so I felt compelled to step in. "Would you listen?" I began, but Elliot cut me off with a, "You're annoying!" He laughed dismissively and even slapped my leg. Watching all this and seeing my son and daughter-in-law only pestering for money without disciplining their out-of-line son, I had reached my limit. "Enough is enough! Julian, you've already had the inheritance talk with the attorney." "Yeah, but taking $3 million is way over the top, Mom. Didn't think you'd be so greedy." "The greedy one is you. I don't have money to give to people who'd never done anything for me." What followed was a heated argument over who was the real money grabber. Frustrated but resolute, I kicked Julian and his family out of my house. Had they been more cordial with my husband and me over the years, I might have considered leaving them an inheritance or education funds. But watching Julian and his crew trying to force their selfish agenda, I felt nothing but anger and disbelief. Despite our heated exchange and my asking them to leave, Julian and his family returned the next day with Ashley's parents in tow. even after asking them their purpose through the intercom. All they did was demand entry into the house. Figuring it would be a nuisance to the neighbors, I reluctantly let them in. Once inside, Ashley's parents began lecturing me. "Look, we're both families with adorable grandchild. We need to help each other out." "That's right. You've just lost your husband. You must be feeling vulnerable." "So this is family, is it? This is helping each other?" I felt like the two of them went on and on, lecturing me. Julian and Ashley just nodded in agreement, not uttering a word. As usual, their adorable son, Elliot, was running around the living room, full of energy. I told him to stop running. "Shut up!" Elliot shouted, as per usual. And for that, rather than being concerned about the child's behavior, I ended up getting blamed by all four of them. Normal families would want to help their sons and grandchildren in any way they can, especially for when the day comes that we need their help. I plan to prepare things for myself so that I'm not a burden on my children. That's a lonely way to think, and that's why you don't get to see your grandson. Aren't you ashamed to only think about yourself? That's right, our daughter gave birth to that child. Your husband was Elliot's grandfather. He would have wanted to help financially. They talked a lot about family ties, but in the end, it all came back to money. Were these two also swayed by Julian and Ashley? Were they here just to get their hands on some inheritance? I had had enough. They assumed Julian would be their future caregiver because he's their daughter's husband. They talked nonsense about what a family should be, even though they're practically strangers. Clash! Suddenly, a loud noise came from behind, making everyone turn around. There on the floor were shattered pieces of a vase that used to sit on a shelf, and Elia's surprised face. He probably knocked it over while running around. Seeing the vase my late husband loved, now in pieces, I felt a surge of anger inside me. Wow, that's a spectacle. "Hey, Elliot, are you okay? You didn't get hurt, did you? Why would you put something dangerous within a child's reach? If our precious grandson gets hurt, you know you'll have to pay for it, right?" Julian, who just smirked, Ashley and her parents making a fuss about potential injuries. I listened to them in silence, already fuming, and let out a heavy sigh. "So, where's the inheritance? You've probably settled all the formalities by now, right?" "About that." "Huh? That vase Elliot just shattered was part of my husband's legacy." For a moment, Julian and the others exchanged glances and fell silent. They glanced briefly at the shards, then looked at my angry face and paled. "Mother-in-law, you're joking, right?" "No joke. As you all mentioned, the formalities are already completed, but keeping that much money in cash is a risk nowadays. Who knows who might target it? So I converted it into something valuable." Kristen replied, a hint of sarcasm in her voice. The confusion on their faces was evident. I had to hold back a chuckle. Pretending to be distraught, I looked down and covered my mouth. "Come on, there's no way that ugly vase is worth $3 million, right? Right, Mom? Would you like me to show you the certificate for the vase? Oh, and I suppose I'll need to file a police report." "What? You're kidding, right? It was a child's mistake." "Well, parents are responsible for their children's actions, right? Can you cover the $3 million? Don't say such things. After all, families should help each other." "Yes, exactly. So you'll help me, right? After all, I'm family too, and you ruined my husband's legacy." The four of them exchanged glances, clearly flustered and at a loss for words. The first to speak was Julian. He said it was Ashley's fault for not disciplining their child properly. Ashley trying to argue back, and Ashley's parents defensively claiming that how their grandchild was raised wasn't their concern. Enough! How can adults who can't even apologize talk about disciplining a child? Not one of them attempted to apologize to me. This only fueled my anger further. I couldn't stand their attitude, acting as it was okay to inconvenience others. Only Elliot quietly apologized to me, saying, "I'm sorry." He probably did so reflexively, sensing how angry I was. Despite witnessing all this, the four of them kept their heads down and said nothing. Julian finally mustered the courage to say, "We'll discuss this another day." Then they all hastily left. Elliot, the person at the center of all this, was led away with a clueless expression on his face, which I couldn't help but find amusing. So, that's why I thought I should fill in Sasha first. What is Julian even thinking? People really change when money is involved. After a hearty laugh, I made sure to tell Sasha about what had transpired and to be wary of Julian. Every now and then, they'd call as if they'd forgotten about everything, usually about their son's activities or birthday gifts. Every time they call, I remind them cleaning up those broken pot pieces was heartbreaking. After that, they usually hang up pretty quickly. A few weeks after reaching out to Sasha, I got a call from her. Apparently, just as we suspected, Julian had gone crying to Sasha. "Hey Sasha, can you lend me some of the inheritance you received?" "Are you kidding? You're still asking for that?" "I'm begging you. I've gotten myself into a bit of a jam." Julian had frantically approached Sarah, saying he needed to compensate for a $3 million vase he'd broken. When asked what happened to the inheritance he received, Julian said Ashley and his in-laws were spendthrifts and had already blown through it all. Sasha apparently lectured Julian, saying that he brought this on himself by being greedy when he should have been content with what he had. Julian desperately tried to use his kids as an excuse to wheedle more money, but Sasha patiently explained that even her share wouldn't cover his debts. Dejected, Julian went back home. Hearing all this, I couldn't help but laugh again. It seems Julian and his family are now at odds over who should take responsibility for the debt. Occasionally, they'd call, taking turns asking for leniency, but as soon as I'd suggest we talk through lawyers, they'd go silent. They ended up hanging up on their end. Thanks to that, I'm now enjoying my days without any involvement with them. By the way, the story about my grandson Elliot breaking a $3 million vase as part of the inheritance was, of course, a lie. The actual vase was a cheap one my late husband had picked up from Home Depot because he liked it. It had been a decorative vase since my husband's time, but we only started displaying it after Julian and his family had moved out. There's no way they could have known about it. If they had shown any regret for their actions and a willingness to make amends, I would have happily told them the truth. However, I haven't heard from them since those few phone calls. In fact, it seems they've blocked my number. I can't even get through to them. Naturally, the real inheritance is still sitting safely in the bank. I had been planning to use a little for my retirement and leave the rest for the kids, but after the incident, I've completely changed my mind. Sasha, how about we go on a trip together sometime? Sounds good. Where should we go? How about a hot spring resort? Oh, that sounds lovely. Also, I've been wanting to have a proper conversation with you about my inheritance. After seeing Julian and his family's true colors, I've had a change of heart. I can't entrust my late husband's hard-earned money to people like them. I'm now thinking of not only leaving the inheritance to Sasha, but also exploring better ways to use it as we move forward in life.